Have you ever wondered why some people remain unshaken, even when everything around them is falling apart? Why do they find peace in chaos, confidence in uncertainty, and hope when others are ready to give up? The answer may not be found in changing their circumstances at all. It may lie in something far deeper, the place they have chosen for God in their lives. What if putting God first isn't simply about praying more or attending church more often? What if it completely transforms the way you think, love, decide, and live? Today, we'll uncover 10 powerful changes that begin the moment God becomes the true center of your life. And the final one may completely change how you see everything you value. Most people spend their lives chasing approval. Every achievement becomes another attempt to prove they are enough. Success brings temporary satisfaction, while failure often leaves them questioning their worth. It's an exhausting cycle driven by performance, comparison, and fear of not measuring up. But Scripture reveals a completely different foundation for identity. Before Jesus performed a single miracle, preached his first sermon, or called his first disciple, heaven opened. In Matthew 3:17, the Father's voice declared, "This is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased." Notice the timing. God's approval came before Jesus' public ministry ever began. His identity was never built upon accomplishments. It rested securely in the Father's love. When God becomes first in a person's life, something remarkable happens. The desperate need to earn acceptance slowly fades away. Instead of working for love, they begin living from love. Obedience is no longer fueled by fear of rejection, but by gratitude for a relationship that already exists. Imagine a child who knows beyond any doubt that their father loves them. That child doesn't wake up every morning wondering how to deserve a place in the family. They already belong. Because they belong, they grow with confidence instead of anxiety. The same principle shapes the Christian life. When identity is rooted in God's unchanging love rather than human performance, failure no longer defines the future, and success no longer becomes an idol. Life is no longer a race to earn value. It becomes a journey of faithfully reflecting the value already given by God. When God takes first place, peace no longer depends on everything going according to plan. The world offers a fragile kind of peace. It appears when the bills are paid, the family is healthy, the future looks predictable, and nothing seems out of control. But the moment one part of life begins to collapse, that peace disappears. Biblical peace is different. It does not require perfect circumstances. It is rooted in the presence of God. Acts chapter 12 tells the story of Peter being held in prison. He was chained between soldiers, guarded carefully, and expected to face execution the following day. From a human perspective, there was every reason to panic, yet Peter was sleeping. He was not pacing through the darkness or imagining every possible outcome. He rested because his confidence was not placed in the prison walls, the guards, or his ability to escape. His trust was placed in God. This does not mean believers never feel fear, pressure, or grief. It means those emotions no longer have the final authority. When God is first, peace begins to flow from trust rather than control. A person may not know what tomorrow will bring, but they know who will be present when tomorrow arrives. The storm may still surround the boat, but the presence of Christ changes the meaning of the storm. Problems do not always disappear immediately, yet the heart begins to understand that no circumstance is greater than the God who remains faithful within it. When God becomes the center, decisions begin to grow clearer. Many people make choices based on fear, pressure, approval, money, or comfort. They ask which option will create the least conflict, bring the most recognition, or protect them from disappointment. The result is often confusion. Proverbs 3:6 says, "In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths." This does not promise that every decision will become effortless. It means that a person's direction becomes clearer when God's will becomes the highest priority. Imagine a pilot flying through thick fog. The view outside the window may be completely obscured. Trusting personal vision alone would be dangerous. The pilot must rely on instruments that provide direction, even when the path cannot be seen. In the same way, faith becomes an instrument panel for life. Instead of asking, what will make everyone happy? Or which choice will make life easiest? The question becomes, which path honors God? That single question removes much of the noise. A choice may still require courage. It may cost comfort, popularity, or immediate reward. But when the goal is faithfulness rather than approval, Confusion begins to lose its power. God does not always reveal the entire road at once. Often, he provides enough light for the next faithful step. And as each step is taken, the path becomes clearer. When God comes first, sin begins to lose its power. Not merely on the surface, but at its very root. Many people approach spiritual growth like pulling weeds from a garden. They focus on stopping certain behaviors. They promise themselves they will stop lying, stop giving in to temptation, stop speaking harshly, or stop holding on to bitterness. For a while they succeed. Then, almost without warning, those same struggles return. Why? Because behavior is rarely the deepest problem. Sin is often the visible fruit of a heart that has placed its greatest love somewhere other than God. Jesus explained this truth in John 15:5 when he said, "I am the vine. You are the branches. Whoever abides in me and I in him, he it is that bears much fruit." Notice that Jesus did not command his followers to manufacture fruit through sheer determination. Instead, he invited them to remain connected to him. Think of a tree as winter comes to an end. Dead leaves cling stubbornly to its branches, but no one has to remove every single one by hand. As fresh life begins flowing through the tree, those old leaves naturally fall away. The same principle applies to the human heart. The closer a person grows to God, the more his love reshapes their desires. Habits that once seemed impossible to overcome begin losing their appeal. Old temptations no longer carry the same influence because a greater affection has taken their place. This transformation is not instant. It is a lifelong process of becoming more like Christ. Instead of spending every day fighting darkness, believers gradually begin walking in greater light. As that light grows brighter, many of the old chains simply lose their grip. Victory over sin is not merely about stronger willpower. It begins with a deeper relationship. Waiting may be one of the greatest tests of faith. Everyone waits for something. Some wait for healing. Some wait for the right career opportunity. Others wait for restored relationships, financial breakthrough, answered prayers, or direction for the future. During those seasons, it is easy to believe that nothing is happening. But God often does his greatest work in places where human eyes see very little. Consider the life of Joseph. After being betrayed by his own brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused, and imprisoned for a crime he never committed, Joseph spent years watching his dreams appear farther away than ever before. To anyone observing his life, those years looked wasted, yet Genesis repeatedly reminds readers of one simple truth. The Lord was with Joseph. God had not abandoned him. God was preparing him. Every difficult season developed qualities Joseph would one day need as the leader who would preserve an entire nation during famine. His integrity, wisdom, patience, humility, and dependence upon God were not formed inside a palace. They were formed inside hardship. The same truth continues today. Waiting is rarely God's way of saying no. More often, it is his way of preparing both the person and the purpose. A blessing received before someone is spiritually ready can easily become a burden instead of a gift. God understands not only what people are praying for, but also who they must become before they can faithfully carry what he intends to place in their hands. So while waiting may feel silent, heaven is never inactive. Behind every unseen season, God is shaping character that will support the calling still to come. For those who put him first, waiting is never wasted. It is preparation wrapped in patience. When God becomes the highest priority, relationships begin to change in ways that are both unexpected and deeply healing. Many broken relationships are not caused by a lack of love. They are caused by unrealistic expectations. People often look to a spouse, a friend, a child, or even a parent to provide what only God can give. They expect another human being to become the source of complete happiness, constant security, perfect understanding, and unconditional acceptance. But no person was ever created to carry that responsibility. When someone is expected to become a savior, disappointment becomes inevitable. Small failures feel enormous. Unmet expectations slowly give birth to resentment, criticism, and emotional distance. Everything changes when God takes his rightful place. Instead of demanding that others constantly fill an empty heart, believers begin living from a heart that God himself is filling. This changes the way they love. Forgiveness becomes possible because they remember how much they have been forgiven. Patience grows because they recognize how patient God has been with them. Humility replaces pride because they understand that every blessing is an expression of God's grace rather than personal achievement. Love also becomes healthier. Instead of asking, "What can this person do for me?" the question gradually becomes, "How can I reflect God's love to this person?" Imagine pouring water into a cup that is already overflowing. It naturally spills over onto everything around it. That is what happens when God's love fills the heart first. Relationships are no longer driven by desperation. They become opportunities to serve, encourage, strengthen, and bless others. No human relationship becomes perfect, but when God is first, people stop asking others to carry a burden they were never designed to bear. They are finally free to love one another as God intended. Putting God first does not mean fear disappears. It means fear no longer has the final word. Every person experiences moments of uncertainty, unexpected medical reports, financial pressure, family struggles, major life decisions. Fear often arrives without invitation. The question is not whether fear will appear. The question is who will be trusted when it does. One of the greatest examples is found in the story of David and Goliath in 1 Samuel chapter 17. As the giant stood before Israel's army, experienced soldiers saw only an impossible enemy. Day after day, fear grew stronger. No one believed victory was possible. Then a young shepherd walked onto the battlefield. David saw the same giant. He heard the same threats. He understood the same danger. Yet he reached a completely different conclusion. Why? Because while everyone else measured Goliath against themselves, David measured Goliath against God. The giant had not become smaller. David's view of God had become greater. Faith does not deny reality. David did not pretend Goliath was weak. Instead, he believed God's power was infinitely greater than the obstacle standing before him. The same principle transforms believers today. Fear may still whisper, "What if everything falls apart?" But faith quietly answers, "What if God is already working in ways that cannot yet be seen?" Every challenge presents two choices: to magnify the problem, or to magnify the God who is greater than every problem. Those who place God first gradually discover that courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to trust God more than they trust their fear. And when faith begins making the decisions instead of fear, life starts moving in an entirely new direction. One of the most beautiful changes that takes place when God becomes first is that the heart itself begins to change. Many people imagine the Christian life as a constant battle of forcing themselves to do things they do not enjoy while resisting everything they truly want. But genuine transformation is much deeper than behavior. It reaches desire. Psalm 37:4 declares, "Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart." This verse is often misunderstood as a promise that God will simply hand out whatever someone asks for. Instead, it reveals something even greater. As people delight in God, he reshapes the very desires of their hearts. The ambitions that once controlled them slowly lose their grip. The pursuit of status becomes less important than living faithfully. The craving for recognition begins giving way to humility. The need to constantly compete is replaced with contentment. At the same time, entirely new desires begin to grow. A desire to know God more deeply. A desire to serve others without expecting anything in return. A desire to forgive instead of holding on to bitterness. A desire to live for something eternal rather than temporary. This is not simply self-improvement. It is spiritual renewal. The heart that once chased the world begins chasing the one who created it. And in that pursuit, people discover a joy that temporary pleasures could never provide. When God becomes the center of life, even the ordinary begins to carry extraordinary meaning. The daily routine may appear exactly the same. The alarm clock still rings. Breakfast still needs to be prepared. Daymoms still need to be answered. Children still need attention. Responsibilities still demand time and energy. From the outside, very little seems different. But inwardly, everything has changed. Colossians 3:23 reminds believers, "Whatever you do, work heartily, as for the Lord and not for men." That single truth transforms every ordinary task. Work is no longer only about earning a paycheck. It becomes an opportunity to honor God through excellence and integrity. Caring for family is no longer just another responsibility. It becomes an expression of Christ's love, helping a neighbor, encouraging a friend, showing kindness to a stranger. These are no longer random acts. They become acts of worship. Even moments that once felt insignificant begin carrying eternal value. A simple conversation may become an opportunity to offer hope. A quiet act of generosity may become an answer to someone's prayer. A faithful decision made in private may shape a future that only God can fully see. When God is first, purpose is no longer reserved for extraordinary moments. Purpose fills ordinary life. Every day becomes another opportunity to reflect His character in a world desperately searching for light. All of these changes lead to one final and life-defining truth. When God is first, everything else finally finds its proper place. Many people hesitate to surrender completely because they fear losing the things they love most. They imagine that putting God first means caring less about family, less about dreams, less about work, less about success. But the opposite is true. C.S. Lewis once wrote, "When I have learned to love God better than my earthly dearest, I shall love my earthly dearest better than I do now." Those words reveal a profound spiritual principle. Nothing in life was ever designed to occupy God's place. Not money, not relationships, not achievements, not reputation, not even the greatest dreams. Whenever something created becomes the center of life, it begins carrying a weight it was never meant to bear. Careers become sources of identity. Money becomes the measure of security. Relationships become objects of worship. And because none of these things can satisfy the deepest needs of the human soul, disappointment eventually follows. But when God occupies the center, everything else falls into its proper order. Success becomes a gift rather than an obsession. Wealth becomes a tool rather than a master. Family becomes a blessing rather than an idol. Dreams become opportunities to glorify God rather than replace Him. Nothing else has to carry the impossible burden of being a savior. Only God was created for that place, and when He is there, every other part of life begins to align around Him. Just as the planets remain in order because they revolve around the sun, the human heart finds stability only when it revolves around its Creator. That is why putting God first changes everything. It does not instantly remove every difficulty. It changes the center from which every difficulty is faced. Real transformation does not begin with changing habits. It begins with changing the center of the heart. When God is no longer treated as just one part of life, but becomes the foundation beneath every part of life, everything begins to change. Identity becomes secure. Peace grows stronger than circumstances. Decisions become clearer. Fear loses its authority. Relationships become healthier. Waiting gains purpose. Even ordinary moments become filled with eternal significance. The greatest miracle is not that life suddenly becomes easier. The greatest miracle is that no matter what life brings, God remains faithful, constant, and worthy of complete trust. Perhaps the invitation today is wonderfully simple. Take one step closer to God. Play Him where He has always deserved to be, at the very center of your life. When that happens, you may discover that the greatest change was never around you. It was always within you. Thank you so much for watching. If this message encouraged your heart or strengthened your faith, consider subscribing to the channel and sharing this video with someone who may need this reminder today. Leave a comment below and share which of these 10 life-changing truths spoke to you the most. May God's peace guide your heart, His wisdom direct your steps, and His love remain the unshakable foundation of your life. Until next time, may God richly bless you.